Welcome to DrupalBrief. This is an AI-generated summary of another video, podcast, or blog post. If you want to learn more about what's being discussed here, then please go check out the source. This podcast is sponsored by Drupal Forge. Drupal Forge is an open-source, lightning-fast demo, development, and testing platform. It spins up Drupal sites in less than 5 seconds, complete with a browser-based VS Code. Want to try Drupal CMS, Drupal AI, Experience Builder? No need to install anything on your laptop. Drupal Forge has you covered. Even Composer, Drush, and AI keys are pre-installed so you can hit the ground running. Demo Drupal in less than 5 seconds only at Drupal Forge. Please take a second to click subscribe. We're a new podcast and this helps us a lot. Okay, that's it. Ready? Here we go.
Welcome, Curious Minds. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, a stack of sources that help us navigate two really interconnected yet distinct things shaping our professional lives.
Yeah, they definitely tie together in some interesting ways.
So first, we'll get into a piece of tech that, honestly, it initially made me raise my eyebrows a bit. A specific Drupal module. It's designed to bridge, open source flexibility with a major corporate software suite. For a lot of us in web dev, the idea of deep integration with Microsoft 365, it can bring this sort of knee-jerk, no-way reaction.
I can see that.
But as we dug into the details, it became clear this wasn't just useful, it's actually surprisingly powerful.
Right.
Then we pivot to something affecting nearly all of us. The complex, often emotional tug-of-war on remote work and this push for back to the office. We'll explore some of the surprising forces really driving those decisions.
Yeah, the why behind it all.
Exactly. Our mission today is to cut through the noise, pull out the most important nuggets, and, well, give you a shortcut to being truly well-informed on these timely issues.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because these aren't just separate topics floating around.
Right.
What we'll see today is how this technological integration, the tools and the whole evolving landscape of workplace dynamics are just profoundly interconnected. They're constantly shaping how organizations function, how they adapt, even how they define their culture. Understanding both the sophisticated tools that enable new ways of working and the sort of underlying motivations behind work policies.
Yeah. That's
absolutely key to navigating your professional path forward.
Okay, so let's start by unraveling that surprising utility I mentioned. We're talking about the Microsoft 365 Connector Drupal module.
Right.
And like I said, my initial thought was genuinely, why? Why would anyone want this? But the more you learn, the more you realize it can be a strategic game changer.
It really can.
So this module, it was started back in July 2019 by a user named Immoral. The most recent release is by Boris Dozberg Betegolix from Finalist, which is a Dutch Drupal shop.
Yeah, they're well regarded.
And it's actively maintained. Current versions are 5.0.22 and a 5.1.0 beta 1. Supports Drupal 9.4, 10, and even 11.
So it's up to date.
Totally. Solid security, extensive test coverage, 2 documentation guides. And maybe coincidentally, maybe not, it's used by 365 sites, according to Drupal.org.
365. That's neat. But yeah, the core strategic power here, it really lies in its deep integration with the Microsoft Graph API.
Okay, explain the Graph API a bit.
So think of the Microsoft Graph as this unified API. It's a single point of access to data and intelligence across basically all Microsoft 365 services. We're talking Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, you name it.
Got it. Unified access.
Exactly. And the connector module itself, it comes with over a dozen submodules. Each one gives you specific features.
Like what?
Well, single sign-on is a big one. Users can log into your Drupal site seamlessly using their existing Azure AD credentials.
Okay, that alone is pretty huge for enterprises.
Oh, definitely. But there's more. It can sync user data from Azure AD directly to Drupal user accounts. It lets you send Teams messages from within Drupal.
Whoa, okay.
And automatically add event nodes created in Drupal to people's Outlook calendars and invite attendees right there.
Nice.
And it even creates new Drupal users automatically when they sign in the first time via SSO.
So it provisions them on the fly.
Precisely. Now, setting this up, it does require registering an application in Azure AD. So it's not exactly a casual click and go thing for any user.
Need some admin buy-in.
Yeah. But for anyone who has the right permissions in their Microsoft environment, the documentation guide is actually pretty clear and straightforward. So it makes it a really compelling solution for organizations already heavily invested in that Microsoft 365 suite, especially if they're building powerful intranets or, collaboration platforms. It bridges that open source flexibility with the enterprise infrastructure they already have.
That's a powerful foundation. But what what really pushes this from just useful to maybe indispensable for those companies already deep in Microsoft? Is there like a killer feature or a strategic edge that made you see its real potential?
Yeah, good question.
And maybe for our web dev audience, how does this specifically tackle pain points they might be facing right now?
You're right to push on that. I think the profound insight here is that this module isn't just like connecting two systems. It's more like a strategic bridge that starts dismantling those traditional silos between systems. It gives you this rare chance to leverage those massive existing Microsoft investments without giving up the flexibility, the extensibility, the whole community power of Drupal.
Okay.
I mean, think about the common pain point of just disjointed user experiences, right? Or data stuck in silos between the internal collaboration tools and the public website or internal portal.
Totally. Happens all the time.
This module helps centralize authentication and enable some really powerful data flow between them.
So you're telling me I might finally be able to send that your report is overdue Teams message directly from Drupal without having to jump between windows. My productivity and maybe my sanity, thank you?
Potentially, yeah, if you set up the automation.
It reminds me a little bit of the old school LDAP modules for Active Directory in Drupal. Those could be notoriously tricky to get working right.
Oh, I remember those.
Is this M365 connector a significantly smoother ride? Or are there still similar, integration dragons to slay?
It's definitely smoother than some of those older LDAP integrations. Mostly because the Microsoft Graph API itself is just much more modern and unified.
Okay.
The integration dragons, as you put it, are probably more about navigating your own organization's internal IT policies. And the security protocols for getting that app registration approved in Azure AD. It's less about the module itself being inherently super complex. Once you actually have the necessary Azure AD permissions, the technical setup within Drupal is, like I said, quite well documented. It's generally less prone to those obscure, hard-to-debug errors you might remember.
And for our listeners, getting those permissions to create an app in your Microsoft org, that might mean you have to go up the food chain a few levels, right? Is that a common hurdle?
Like go up the food chain scenario. Absolutely. That's probably the most common hurdle.
Okay.
And it really speaks to the need for IT and development teams to collaborate closely on these kinds of integrations. You need to be able to articulate the clear business value to justify getting those permissions.
Makes sense. So that module, it clearly shows how technology is enabling new kinds of collaboration, streamlining workflows. But what about the human side of that whole equation?
Right. How we actually use these tools or don't.
Exactly. How are our actual workplaces adapting? Or in some cases, kind of resisting these big shifts? And that brings us neatly to our second major topic today, which affects almost everyone in the professional world right now, remote work and that push for back to the office.
It's a big debate.
Yeah. And to help us unpack this, we looked at insights from Colleen Clarkson. She's the Chief Operating Officer of BlendMe Inc.
Yeah.
Colleen brings nearly 20 years of experience in strategic operations, event planning, and BlendMe Inc. has specialized specifically in remote work people operations since way back in 2013.
Wow, so they were early adopters.
Way ahead of the curve. Her role is basically ensuring services align with the strategic plan, the CEO's vision. They provide fractional HR leadership for small businesses, essentially, contract HR pros, drawing on experts from places like Google, Amazon, Tesla, EY.
So real-world expertise.
Definitely. As for the current vibe in the remote work landscape, well, the sources describe it as uneasy, full of conflicting opinions, and frankly, a lot of conflict and frustration, especially from employees who've been working successfully remotely for years now.
You definitely feel that tension.
Yeah.
And it raises that important question. What's really driving this push to get people back into offices?
Yeah, what's the data say? Oh, wait.
Exactly. The critical insight here is that these mandates are often, as the source puts it, feelings versus data-driven. There's very little actual data usually accompanying them. And this is despite even the government's own research consistently showing the productivity of remote work holds up or even improves in many roles.
Right. We saw that during the pandemic.
We did. So why this big push, almost like collective amnesia about the last few years? Well, first, it's often leadership preference, plain and simple. Many leaders just revert to what they know, how they were brought up in the workplace, how they managed things before.
Okay, familiarity.
Second, there's significant government pressure. Federal and local governments are actively pushing for return to office. Why? To spur economic development downtown, justify tax breaks given for office spaces.
Ah, the economics.
Yeah. In San Francisco, for instance, they even colloquially call it the Salesforce tax, reflecting those tax incentives tied to companies keeping a physical presence downtown, that whole push for revitalization.
Interesting.
Third, there's a huge financial concern around commercial real estate. We're talking billions of dollars in commercial real estate loans coming due. That directly impacts wealthy investors and often the C-suite's own portfolios.
So vested interests.
Big time. And finally, sometimes, quite tactically, it can be a way to reduce headcount without formal layoffs.
How so?
Forcing a return to office prompts some people who really value remote work to resign voluntarily. That saves the company on severance packages and avoids the negative press of layoffs.
Wow. Okay, so it's complicated. It's a real productivity paradox then, isn't it? The data consistently shows remote work is just as productive, often more so, for most jobs, especially in tech.
Overwhelmingly, yes.
But while the data points one way, I have heard arguments, about those intangible benefits. Things like spontaneous collaboration or building culture faster when everyone's physically together. How do you respond to that? Does BlendMe Inc. have strategies for that?
Yeah, you've definitely hit on the core tension there. And it's true, some activities like maybe intense brainstorming sessions or certain specific UX design faudas might feel more efficient or fluid in person.
Okay.
But those can often be handled effectively through intentional planned retreats or specific gathering days.
Right.
It doesn't necessitate a full-time return for everyone.
Right.
The real tension isn't just, productivity metrics versus seeing faces in the office. It's more this profound clash between leadership's often deeply ingrained, sometimes almost nostalgic, emotional connection to an older work model.
The way things used to be.
Exactly. Versus the evolving data-backed reality of a workforce that can be globally distributed, largely autonomous, and highly productive remotely. It often becomes an emotional, sometimes frankly irrational driver for these decisions.
So it's not always logical.
Not always. And BlendMe Inc., based on the sources, believes that for remote companies, the key is being really intentional about creating connection moments.
Okay, intentional connection, what does that look like?
They categorize these connections into 3 buckets: lifestyle connections, professional connections, and intimate connections. The idea is companies need to be aware of fostering all 3 for healthy, productive employees.
Interesting framework.
And this means using intentional, outcomes-driven gatherings. Think retreats, planning sessions, even encouraging teams to attend industry events together, like Drupal camps. It's about building on principles like those in the book, The Art of Gathering, making sure there's a purpose beyond just being in the same room.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like some companies are really trying to put the genie back in the bottle, aren't they?
Seems that way sometimes.
After years proving remote work works, suddenly the office is pitched as the magic bullet again, even when the data doesn't support it. But aren't there risks? Like, by prioritizing these financial pressures or maybe just leader feelings, aren't companies overlooking the real competitive advantage of a genuinely flexible, people-first culture?
Absolutely. And if we connect this back to BlendMe Inc.'s approach, they actually take a very clear stance, according to the sources. They do not work with organizations that mandate return to office without solid data backing it up.
Really? That's quite a line in the sand.
It is. Their view is that those organizations likely aren't truly people-first or genuinely culture-driven in a meaningful way. And for knowledge-based businesses today, those 2 things, mandating RTO without data and being people-first, are basically incompatible.
Wow.
So a company mandating return to office across the board with no real employee input or transparent data sharing, that's seen as a significant red flag for potential employees. It signals a lack of data-driven decision-making.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it puts managers in a really tough spot, too, trying to enforce unpopular policies. A respectful rollout, one that actually demonstrates a people-first mindset, would involve things like surveying employees, leadership, transparently sharing the data, the reasoning, the trade-offs.
Okay, so transparency and data are key. What does this all mean then for the different hybrid models we're seeing pop up?
Right, because hybrid is where it gets really complex.
Yeah, the sources say fully remote and fully on-site are actually the easiest models just because they're uniform. Everyone's doing the same thing.
Makes sense. Simpler logistics.
Hybrid, though, is labeled the most difficult because there are just so many variations. You've got hybrid by choice, where there's no mandate. That's often preferred for being people first.
But
it requires significant intentional spending on those gatherings we talked about to actually foster connection. Otherwise, people might just come into an empty or near empty office, which kind of defeats the purpose.
yeah, the ghost office problem.
Exactly. Then there's the fixed day mandate. Like everyone comes in on Wednesdays. That offers predictability, which some people like, but it sacrifices flexibility. What if you have a doctor's appointment that Wednesday?
Right. Life happens.
Other models mentioned were things like 1 full week per month in the office, maybe Monday to Thursday, or 3 specific weeks per quarter. The least preferred by employees, apparently, is 1 full month per quarter in the office. That sounds pretty agitating, a big disruption.
Yeah, that's a long stretch to uproot your routine.
But what's compelling about some of these hybrid models is how they can potentially widen a company's talent pool significantly. Employees could live much further away and just commute or even fly in periodically.
Opens up geography, definitely.
However, the enforcement of these policies is often, well, poor, especially for high-performing employees. Top salespeople, key developers, AI specialists. Their value often means they can negotiate exemptions or just kind of ignore the mandates.
The rules don't always apply equally.
Seems like it. And executives are often traveling anyway, so they're frequently exempt too. It's also a growing trend for employees to try and negotiate specific remote or hybrid terms right into their offer letters.
Smart move.
Though it's important to remember, companies can legally change those policies later on, even if it's in the offer letter.
That's a crucial point. Policies can evolve. And speaking of this evolving, sometimes strained social contract between companies and their people, we really can't ignore another critical area that's directly impacting employer brand and employee trust right now. And that's the concerning trend of cuts to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
Right, DEI. We've seen headlines about that. Why is that happening?
According to the sources, it's primarily driven by fear and a desire for risk reduction. This stems from recent legal changes, Supreme Court decisions that have opened the door wider for reverse discrimination lawsuits.
Oh, legal anxieties.
Exactly. So, as examples, government websites have apparently been observed scrubbing language about things like culture add or even diversity of thought.
Really? Wow.
And there's speculation that in some large mergers, like the T-Mobile example mentioned, DEI cuts might have been part of the process, perhaps to help gain merger approval by reducing potential legal exposure down the line.
So it's seen as a risk area to be minimized?
By some, yes. But these actions, they have a direct impact on a company's employer brand. That's, how it's perceived by current employees, potential hires, and even customers, based on its values and how it treats people.
Okay, the brand perception.
And this connects really deeply to what we can call the social contract, the relationship between employers and employees, and also between companies and their customers. It's built on this implicit understanding, this social contract of shared values. It's not just about the written policies.
So actions speak louder than HR manuals.
Absolutely. Ignoring federal holidays like Juneteenth or making significant cuts to DEI programs. These things can have major financial and reputational consequences. The Target boycott was mentioned as a stark reminder. People make purchasing decisions and career decisions based heavily on their feelings and a company's perceived values, not just on the product specs or the salary figure alone.
What an incredibly insightful journey this has been today. Seriously. We've gone from the practical power of very specialized software integration, like that Microsoft 365 connector for Drupal, which can streamline complex workflows.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts.
All the way to the deeply human and often really contradictory motivations behind huge workplace policies like these return-to-office mandates.
They're quite the range.
And we've uncovered some pretty surprising drivers behind these big-picture decisions. It's not just about productivity data, is it? It's also commercial real estate interests, government pressures, and maybe most surprisingly, those deeply ingrained emotions and personal preferences that seem to be fundamentally redefining that employer-employee social contract.
It really forces us to look beyond the surface level. And perhaps this raises an important question for you, the listener, to ponder. As technology continues to rapidly evolve our capabilities and information becomes ever more accessible, how will organizations truly reconcile the sort of emotional needs or preferences of leadership with the logical, data-driven realities of productivity and employee well-being?
That's the big question.
And related to that, what kind of social contract will you demand from the places you choose to work for and maybe even the businesses you patronize in the future?
That is a wrap on today's Drupal Brief. Remember, this was an AI-generated summary, so be sure to check out the original source for the full story and all the details. Before you go, if what you heard today got you excited about trying something new in Drupal, remember that Drupal Forge has you covered. Whether you want to test that new module, demo a concept to your team, or just explore the latest Drupal features, you're literally 5 seconds away from a fully loaded development environment. No downloads, no setup, no hassle. Just pure Drupal innovation at your fingertips. If this episode was helpful, please hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. It really helps other Drupal developers discover the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next Drupal Brief.